In recent years, we've seen the rise of a whole new media genre. Call it Millennials Do. Countless stories dedicated to the mysterious, exotic habits of the generation born between the early 80s and the early aughts. But while they may be good clickbait, when you add them all up, those Millennial Do pieces don't make a lot of sense. Adam has more.
Another day, another story about those crazy millennials who the Globe says pay way too much to order McDonald's online.
Super hungry. You guys want to order something?
About time they bring it to us.
Which is kind of weird because we all know millennials hate McDonald's.
McDonald's has been struggling with a way to communicate with a new generation in a lot of ways, and they've been
It's a millennial problem.
Of course, when it comes to millennials, confusing coverage is par for the course. Take their work ethic.
44 million Americans have a second job, and the people most likely to be making cash on the side are millennials.
But not the millennials who were really lazy.
When I was 24, it was unacceptable to not have a job. You'd hide, whereas today it's like, well, of course I can't find a job.
And even when some millennial fact seems indisputable, the explanations vary widely. Maybe millennials don't own homes because college costs are skyrocketing.
71% of millennials today graduate with debt.
Then again, maybe they're just really bad with money.
Millennials are literally drinking away their savings. 41% of them spent more money on coffee than investing in their retirement.
Which might be okay if they weren't ruining it for the rest of us. But as this useful headline collage shows, millennials are killing everything from running to brunch to fashion to democracy. Thanks, millennials. Thanks a lot.
Adam, you forgot to mention that they're the founders of avocado toast.
They can't get enough avocado toast, and that's why they can't afford homes. That's another
You and I have been talking. Oh, and how about the guy who fills his house with plants to keep himself from...
Yeah,
that's another...
to nurture
I also
something.
call these sort of like trend of one stories. You pick up on one person who does his thing like with the Uber, but it's not really... But there is a fascination overall in the media with the millennials. What do you think it is? Is it boomers who are resentful? What is it?
Well, these are, in some cases, boomer journalists writing about their kids, right?
Yeah.
Right?
There's a lot of Gen X.
Yeah. Wait, you think it is Gen X? Because you and I are Gen X, right? I feel like we kind of got the short end of the stick.
I have a millennial story.
Yeah. I think there's also a conviction that they're going to maybe rope millennials in by getting them to read about themselves. Whereas as far as I can tell, in our newsroom, the vast majority of millennials hate this kind of coverage. What drives me crazy with these pieces is, on the one hand, there is rarely context for what other groups do. So, for example, in the Globe story, there's a statement that millennials are driving online ordering, and maybe they are, but we're not told how they stack up to Gen X, how they stack up to baby boomers. You got to put in numbers to provide some context, and there is also never comparison to what young people did 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 30 years ago. So we don't know if it's unique to this batch of young people, or if it's just the way it always works. I'll tell you, when I was right out of college, I was spending much more money on coffee than saving for retirement. I knew I shouldn't, but I did. So.
Well, Adam is trying to pass as a millennial by not wearing a tie today, I guess. Here we are. None of us are millennials. We're all older than that. Some of us are a lot older than that. I don't like this media trend of dumping on the millennials because I think the millennials in many respects got kind of a tough break. They came of age during the Great Recession. I think that they have been heavily victimized by widening income inequality. I think they have a pretty rough time making a go of it in this culture. And then meanwhile, all of us old people who don't have to worry about those issues anymore, who control the media, just go around and make fun of them.
Yeah, there are occasional interesting things to pull out, though. My quick millennial story is I was at a wedding last week, a millennial wedding in New York. Beautiful. I knew it was a millennial wedding because the officiant read the entire ceremony on her phone, like scrolling down.
Way.
Gen X would not do. Gen X would print the paper out, right? This generation does have a different experience with technology, a different experience with the economy. There are stories to tell. It's just that some of these stories have, as Adam said, not enough context. Plus, I think a twinge of Gen X bitterness to them.
Yes.
Well, I also think reporters aren't the one who invented all of this. This was really pushed by marketers, the marketing departments who were saying that you need to focus on this group because this is where the money is being spent. And I think reporters started reflecting who was buying and who was doing what. So I think that's kind of what initially fed this storm, if you will. But, this has been I think this has been going on to some extent for quite a while. I was driving down the street the other day, and I'm a baby boomer, right on the edge of being a baby. I feel
You
old,
are not.
but I am. I am a baby boomer. And I think you have to be born, 1962, right?
64.
I'm 64. Right. I was born in 64, so I've just told my age. But you're always hearing about what baby boomers are not saving, haven't saved enough for retirement, or they can't afford their kids' college tuition, whatever it may be. So we always sort of try to find a group of people, identify them as something, and then use them to tell stories.
Like the greatest generation.
Like the greatest generation. I mean, Tom Brokaw's made a business out of that. And so this is just an extension of that.
Let's keep it going, though.